You're watching Pyro Media Network. Pyro Media family, thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience with us is fruitful. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. And we do hope you consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another round of Conversations with Clergy. I'm your boy, Dr. Donta Morrison, and I am also an HVT in our HIV Vaccine Trials Network Faith Ambassador. So that means my job is to really incite conversations about sexual health, HIV, COVID-19, and really just integrate these discussions into the faith-based community, specifically the Black church. Today is no exception. I'm excited for my two guests that I have on today. These are both men that I truly love and just consider a friend, and I'm glad to have them on today. So without further, you know what? Let me give you time to get up in here. For those who's going to be jumping in and watching and taking part, come on in to Conversations with Clergy and let's get this dialogue going. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to having you here, and I appreciate you being here. All right, now, with that being said, I'm going to jump right on in because we have a short time to get a long way. So my first guest is no other than Pastor Sammie Haynes. And Pastor Sammie Haynes is currently the lead pastor for Vision Church Los Angeles, founder of Love Freedom Movement, chief operations officer for United Progressive Pentecostal Church Fellowship, and creator of the Perfect Gentleman Academy. Pastor Sammie is the epitome of a man seeking to live out his God-given destiny without fear, challenging others to take control of their life experience, fulfillment, and success. His mantra, if God made me an original, why die a copy? Come on here. He clearly continues to defy the odds with an intense work ethic to achieve every vision placed in his heart to transform lives. Yo, family, please help me welcome to Conversations with Clergy, Pastor Sammie Haynes.
Dr. Donta.
Sir, how you doing?
I am good. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you and be here. Thank you.
Most deaf. Your lighting is amazing.
I appreciate that. You know, I'm trying. You got to keep
right. I'm glad to have you here. I appreciate you taking time to be a part of this conversation. We're gonna dive in right after I bring on our other guests. So just stay tuned. Let me do this extensive bio. One sec. So Pastor Curt D. Thomas is the founder and senior pastor of the Renewed Church of Los Angeles, an affiliate of the United Progressive Pentecostal Church Fellowship. He is a native of Pasadena, California, and began his ministerial journey at the age of 9. Can you believe it? He was raised up in church. He is a graduate of Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where he received a Bachelor of Science in Education. Look at that. How about that? He has been privileged to work with a series of ministries and organizations, including the Black AIDS Institute. He has also delivered words at the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference, at a town hall meeting with Hill Harper, and a host of other great leaders. He serves as He has served on the Community Advisory Board for CDC programs for the APLA Health and Wellness. He's a member of the Black Treatment Advocates Network through the Black AIDS Institute. And when it comes to awards, he is honored with the Bayard Rustin Award and a former honoree of the Congressional Award from City Councilman Michael D. Antonovich. He is the director and manager of Mama's House Incorporated, which is a housing program geared towards reaching the homeless and disenfranchised people. Mama's House currently assists the community, which they serve clients with different vulnerabilities. It's Pastor Curt's desire to encourage people to never give up on making their dreams a reality while living their authentic truth. He also desires to build a place where everyone can come and experience the authentic love Jesus displayed in John 3:16. So listen, y'all, please welcome to the show alongside Pastor Sammie Haynes is my brother friend, Pastor Curt Thomas. I know, right? You got a vocal with it.
It's that music. It's that music. Hey, everybody.
How you doing? How you doing, Pastor Curt?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Donta Morrison, for having me. And it's, as always, it's a pleasure to be in the company of the apostle, the bishop, Pastor Sammie Haynes.
Listen, right? Like me, yeah. Elevation is nigh. Elevation is nigh. Stay close.
I'm good.
So listen, basically, Conversations with Clergy, you are both HBTN faith consultants, which means that you have joined me in this fight to really educate the faith community about HIV, sexual health, COVID-19, and ways to integrate these conversations into discussions and into spaces that usually shy away from this topic. You know, we don't have to even keep beating a dead horse to talk about how the church, the Black church specifically, really kind of runs away from conversations about sex, sexuality, sexual experience, and all that kind of stuff. But it is important because, as you both can contest, the Black church is still the hub of the Black community. I don't care how much people want to say, I'm done with the church, I'm sick of the church is this, the church is that. The church still has some footing, and the church still has some power, and the church still can make a difference. So when it comes to this work, I want to just, first of all, thank you both for going on this journey with me and just trusting me in this work. And secondly, thank you for doing the work that you were doing. Prior to going live, I was talking to Kwame backstage, and I had to X out certain questions because I was like, no, these two guests, they're already doing the work, you know, versus when I have traditional pastors come on, we got to talk about their challenges. But you two being a part of Progressive Ministries, you're already in the fight, you're on the pulse. But Pastor Sammie, for those that may not be aware, can you explain the difference between a traditional church and a progressive church?
The traditional church is basically, I call it systematic theology, where, you know, they believe basically the American way of practicing religion through God and Jesus Christ. And that is a heteronormative idea of approaching God, heaven and hell, and those things. But I think when we talk about a progressive church or inclusive ministries, are those ministries that are empowering and affirming all people to experience God. And no one is excluded, but no one is excluded, but everybody's included. So all sexualities, no matter how you identify on the spectrum, this is a safe space, a bold space, a God space that allows you to be the epitome of the whosoever in John 3:16, believeth in him, God, her, however you want to identify, shall have everlasting life. So it's a space where you can progressively, as I always say, reimagine God for your life, in your life, as you walk out your own theological perspective.
And then, and Pastor Curt, just kind of piggybacking off what Pastor Haynes said, because you said, well, when I read your bio, you used John 3:16, you know, as a source of scripture, a reference to really just show people this is what we're all about. And it seems like John 3:16, albeit the scripture that everyone knows, is still not adhered to, because that's one of the most inclusive passages in the Bible to me, because it's clear whosoever, but it seems like the word whosoever does not apply to whosoever. So what would you say to people right now that have kind of walked away from the church? Before I get into the real situation, might save a soul or two right now, who've walked away from the church, walked away from Christ, walked away from ministry because that whosoever did not include them.
Well, what I would say to anybody that has walked away from the church, that I think, as Pastor Sammie said, you have to reimagine what church really is, and the concept of church can't be diluted by what a person told you. The concept of church has to be invigorated by what God has said. So if God said, "Whosoever will, let him come," then you have to live in the fact that God said that I am a part of the beloved, and even though you may not believe that, I'm still a part of the beloved. I'll give an example like this: is that if you own a nice car, and you have the keys to it, but someone says black people can't own nice cars. Well, does it denote the fact that you own a nice car, or do you have the keys? And so I think the reality of the fact is that we have the keys and the principles that are in place for us to become, or for us to become activated in our faith, versus people that live under the guise of others' theological distinctives.
I love that. I love that. Both of y'all are prolific in your own way, in your own approach, and I just know that people are really being brought back to Christ because of your approach to the gospel, and I thank you for that. So let's dig into this first question. You know, conversations with clergy, we like to keep it hot, honest, open, and transparent. You know, so don't hold back. Over the last 2.5 years, I've had clergy on here from all across the country who have really just dug deep. I've had traditional, inclusive, progressive, affirming, however you want to say it, but all of you have said the same thing, that HIV and sexual health and sexuality needs to be something the church is talking about. So our first question for the night is this: as a pastor, how do you address sensitive issues such as sex, sexual identity, and human sexuality from a safe and spiritually healthy place? And I say spiritually healthy place because I've also met a lot of affirming pastors that they seem like they're more focused on the inclusion and less on the morals of the Bible. If that makes sense, Mm-hmm. So I want to, Pastor Sammie, how do you incorporate all this and say, yes, be you, be free, live your best life, but still be a Christian? Let's not lose the Christ concept of all of this. So how do you approach this, Pastor Sammie?
I think I approach it 3 ways, I would say. Number one, that I always remind people, like, we are so quick to say that I am a representative of the body of Christ. But to be that representative of the body of Christ, you must first love the body that you are in. So to thine own self be true. So we're always about affirmation, like affirming your presence, affirming your body, your mind, spirit, and soul as the imago Dei, that you are the image and the reflection of God. So through affirmation. And number 2, I think, is through expansive learning, where we are using information in order to inform our present way of being and seeing ourselves. So through other books that are around not only just theological perspective, but about just living life and moving from a mindset of just trying to survive to, like, what's in my hand? Am I an entrepreneur? Am I, should be an actor? And I'm also a big proponent around education, like go back to school. Like, so it's one thing to talk about it, but I think it's important within our community for there to be upward mobility and to understand the power of our cultural currency. It's also through me as a pastor saying, go back to school, get the education that are necessary, get the license that are necessary for you to be able to elevate your income level. And then the last thing I would say as a pastor, how I address sensitive issues is that I actually have open dialogue in my sermons. So I include information about partnership, information about sex and sexuality and interaction. Like all of those things to me is important. Like no secrets are here. Because what I want you to do is live your best life. And the only way that I can do that is move from the concept of what happens in this house stays in this house. But what I have to do is give voice to it, use my voice. I don't have laryngitis, but use my voice in that pulpit in order to liberate you into a way of being and appreciating the body you're in and your sexuality.
I love that. I love that. Pastor Curt?
So for me, to conceptualize or to get someone to understand, I'm a visual person. And so I normally direct people to do two things. The first thing that I direct them to do is to go, there is a great movie that people can watch on Netflix. It's called Prayers for Bobby. I normally direct people to go and watch Prayers for Bobby. And then the second thing that I instruct people to do is to watch, there is a great documentary that's written from, it's by a lesbian, but written from a heterosexual perspective, and it's called A Fish Out of Water. And so I normally direct people to go to those two things, to actually watch it, to take notes, and then to come back and have a conversation with me. And then in that, we're able to denote and to discuss all of the verses, all of the chapters, all of the different things, or the different ideologies that are placed in our lives by different people. At the end of the day, I think that Rick Warren says it best, that the inclusivity of the church is the third leg of a stool. And so without that third leg, there can be no church. And so I think that it's super important for us to be able to invite people to that thought process, to where they can live and become like the free people that they are. And I think I would go out on a stretch to say that I think that there are some people and some spaces that are starting to allow inclusion, to be a normal thing in their church. It's not, I won't say it's at 90 or 100%, but I think that we are at about 30 or 40% now, to where there are people that are actually having conversations around understanding, and then denoting those conversations to make sure that people feel heard, that people feel seen, that people feel a part. And I think that if we could totally get to 100%, I think that we will gain back the authority of the Black church. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that, but we will gain back the authority of the Black church, and the Black church's voice will become more prevalent in our communities again.
And let me say this, because now that you two, both of you work in the sexual health space, from a personal perspective, from a clergy perspective, you both work in the spaces where people who are either at risk for contracting HIV or living with HIV are able to come to you and candidly talk about their fears and their concerns without biblical judgment. So let's just say that is something that you have the upper hand on, as opposed to more traditional clergy who shy away from that. So when you have people who come to your church, or have you ever had anyone to come to you that felt that their HIV diagnosis was a result of their lifestyle or whatever, and this is God's way of punishing them, and you had to kind of, like Pastor Sammie said, reimagine God, and I'm sure that you both have inherited a lot of people who have church trauma, who have both gay and straight, who have been browbeaten by the Bible and whatnot, and their lives or their behaviors or sexual proclivities, were a result of just living in the dark. And I say living in the dark because when you're living in the dark, you're more risky. You do risky stuff because, let me go out and hold a day and then get back in church on Sunday and repent. So you have these individuals that come to you just broken and running from God, but still running to God at the same time. How does that anger you when it comes to the Black church? and how we do certain populations. And then how do you guide that person towards a place of healing and self-affirmation? Huge question. I'm sorry, Kwame, it's not on the PowerPoint, but it just hit me when you were talking, and I thought about the demographics that you serve. You serve a lot of people who do have church trauma, and they're coming to your spaces of inclusivity to feel like they're part of a community that's going to embrace them for the totality of who they are. How has that been a blessing and a curse? Pastor Sammie, you go first.
I was going to say, go ahead on, Pastor Curt. I would say, yes, you are completely correct. In this space that we are in, for me personally, I encounter it, I would say, almost every week. And at some point, and even during the pandemic, it was almost every day, because people were at home, not working, and all of the traumas, all of the pain, all of this stuff was just crashing in at one point. And I became like an instant counselor. But what I have discovered, particularly serving our community, number one, is very sensitive. It takes a lot of patience to work with our community. And when I talk about our community, let me be very specific. When I talk about the Black LGBTQ community, it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of coaching. It takes a lot of affirming. It takes a lot of pushing the fact to reimagine. It takes a lot of, and a both and, because I also push therapy. We have about 3 mental health workers at Vision Los Angeles. And I intertwine that with spiritual counseling, because I think that is important, because some of the stuff needs to be unearthed and excavated that is living on us, and not on us, but inside of us. That some of it I can do through the work of ministry, but I also think you need to sit on that couch and talk to somebody about it. So I think that's important for me. And then the last thing I say, because I know we're short time, last thing I say is that every time I get a call when someone's saying, "Can you meet me at the LGBT center?" I get very nervous, because I already know when they hear that prognosis, that diagnosis from that doctor, they instantly look at me. And even though we're living in 2024, I still get the question, "Pastor, do you think I'm about to die? Pastor, do you believe this was the reason I got it, because I am gay, or because of A, B, C, and D?" And in that moment, I always have to, I don't think it's no person I have never had to not steal and say it is life after this.
Yeah.
I can give you example of people who are living 20, 15, 20, 15, 12, and the years progress, who are still living from HIV. What you have to do is find the ability to forgive yourself and to see yourself bigger than this. You're not dirty. You're not none of these things. But what is God calling you to do? What is your purpose to fulfill in your life? And how do we work that from where we are right now? But it's important for you to see yourself as a living individual and not an individual that's going to die.
I love it.
Go on and on about that.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And Pastor Curt, I know you have an equally robust response, but I want us to do this commercial break really quick so you don't get cut off. So let's go to a quick commercial. We come back. We're going to get part 2 of that question, and then do our last 2 questions and wrap up this episode of Conversation with Clergy. Yo, thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Know that you can now catch the electrifying sounds of Bulletin Flight Radio anywhere you go? Yes, you heard it right. Tune in to the high-flying beats and soaring melodies by downloading the TuneIn app on your mobile device. Just search for Bulletin Flight Radio and hit play. It's that easy. And if you have a smart device like Alexa or Google, just say, "Hey Google," or "Alexa, play Bulletin Flight Radio on TuneIn." Experience the rush of adrenaline wherever you are. Listen to Bulletin Flight Radio on TuneIn using your Alexa or Google devices. Soaring through the skies has never sounded this good. Don't miss out on the ultimate musical journey. Tune in now to Bullet and Flight Radio on TuneIn and let the music take you on an unforgettable ride. Get ready to elevate your listening experience. Brought to you by Bullet and Flight Radio.
Are you ready for enlightening conversations that transcend boundaries? Get ready for Conversations with Clergy, brought to you by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network. In partnership with the world's largest publicly funded international collaboration, the HVTN is dedicated to evaluating vaccines to prevent HIV and COVID-19. But their impact doesn't stop there. The HVTN is at the forefront of advancing vaccinology, social and behavioral sciences, statistics, immunology, and even contributing to the research on tuberculosis and COVID-19 vaccines. By supporting Conversations with Clergy, the HVTN not only brings you thought-provoking discussions, but also contributes to the global effort to combat infectious diseases. Tune in, stay informed, and be a part of the change. Conversations with Clergy, supported by the HVTN, empowering conversations, empowering lives. Join us in this journey of knowledge, understanding, and progress. Conversations with Clergy, proudly brought to you by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, because together we can make a difference. Welcome back to the second half of Conversations with Clergy. And when we left, Pastor Sammie just really dropped the gauntlet on what we need to do to make sure that everyone feels included in our spaces of worship, so that no one feels demonized or convicted by God for something that they naturally have, period, point blank. So, Pastor Curt, if you want to just elaborate on what Pastor Sammie talked about. Basically, I just asked the question, blessing or curse, dealing with people who are have been traumatized by the Black church, and how does that make you feel as clergy, having to kind of come in and repair these individuals?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Pastor Sammie said in the contextualization of understanding what people go through. I think the saying says that broken crayons still color. And I think what happens is people get caught up on the way the crayon looks versus the ingredients are the same. Mm-hmm. And so I think that what has to happen is we have to get people to, as using Sammie's words, to reimagine who they are. And it's to say, they did like a study that said that that when people looked at pictures, that 40% of the people said everybody that was light skinned was handsome, and 60% of the people, they said because they were dark skinned that they weren't handsome. And that is all an ideology that has been taught over years and years, to where we have to dismiss that thought. It doesn't mean that that 60% is not handsome. It doesn't mean that 60% is not worthy or of whatever. It just means that people's thinking has to change. And so when it comes to sexuality, and when it comes to people being HIV positive, and when their thinking has to change, what they were told has to be reimagined to where they can see that, yeah, my crayon might be a little bit broken, but it still colors the same color as your crayon. And the last thing that I would say is, because I had time to look up a scripture, Sammie, so don't. But Proverbs 34:18 says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And so I think that it's super imperative for us to understand that God is close to us when our heart is broken. And what happens is he begins I posted this earlier on my Facebook, and I said that when you're broken, it just breaks you into more pieces for you to be a broken blessing. And so you might have to experience different things. All of us have experienced different things in our lives, but it doesn't mean that you can't be blessed from those things. I could go on a whole decalogue about all the stuff that has happened to me in my 45 years of being here on the earth. But all of those things have transferred into something else that has made me the strong individual that I am today. So I think pushing and empowering people to understand that you may be HIV positive, but it doesn't define your broken crayon. You may be, dealing with sexual ideations or whatever. It doesn't define who you are. You may have accepted the fact that you're trans and other people don't accept that. It still doesn't define who you are. Last thing, and then I'm done, is that if you watch Netta and Charles, they're a new sensation on Instagram. Charles, she is not bothered by what people are saying. She is honing in on the fact that she is who she is and she appreciates who she is.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, Pastor Sam. Yes, Pastor. Y'all can't help me.
If I can say one thing. I think I just want to say, as I was listening to Overseer Curt Thomas, one of the things I thought was beautiful is this celebrates the work that he and I and other progressive ministries are doing, because we are creating space and changing the narrative to say that HIV positive or not, you are still the embodiment of God.
Right.
And when we walk in the confidence of knowing that I'm here as a representative of God, and God is not operating outside and not even dwelling in me, because he said, I'll go away, but what's coming is going to be in you. That if we really embrace the fact that God is in us, the work that we're doing is the work of God, Jesus Christ. And secondly, as pastors, we have to have the empathy. Like, we have to have the empathy as a progressive pastors for people, for their situations, to show up in a way for them that people have not showed up. Sometimes for us, we have to be able to show up because people have experienced more negative than positive things. And that's why I say all the time, we are the bridge. We are the bridge to get people over from the land of Egypt into the land of Exodus. And if we don't understand that we are the bridge with liberation in the back of us and pushing people across this water, then, we're missing our purpose and why we're here. And that's why, I always try to take moments to say, like, the work that you are doing, Pastor Curt, the work that you are doing, Dr. Donta, the work that we are doing, at the end of the day, we are saving lives.
Yes.
In order for them to see themselves fully of why they're here and what they've been called to do, so their gifts can bring them into the room of the right people at the right time.
I love that. I love that. And then, Pastor Sammie, you said something very crucial. You said during the pandemic, during COVID, it was a tad bit more challenging, dealing with congregants. And I make this joke with everybody I talk about when they talk about people that's dealing with church hurt and over the church. I said, COVID made it legal to stay home. You can really tell your pastor, I can't, sir, I just can't do it. It's against the law. I can't come to church tomorrow. I just can't do it. And I think that was an out for a lot of people that felt trapped and obligated to be a part of a system that they had no longer bought into. So just the question now, how did COVID-19 and the pandemic, how did it impact your churches? What did it do to your ministries? Did it grow it? Did it shrink it? Was it challenging? Were you scared during that season? Because the last two questions, basically, how did the pandemic affect your ministry? And secondly, how do you keep people safe? And how do you make sure that they're still being adherent? Because in LA County, we're still seeing these ups and downs when it comes to the pandemic. So you have a responsibility. So yes, it shifted the church. Many left, never returned. How did it impact your ministry? And then the follow-up question to that, as clergy, what do you do? Because in LA County, we're seeing the rates, go up and go down, go up and go down. Mask mandates this week, they go next week. How do you make sure that everyone that's a part of your ministry or affiliated, is staying safe? Because some people still aren't vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
Two-part question, double-headed. Pastor Curt, you go first.
Well, what we're doing at Renewed is we make sure that we sanitize just all of the basic kind of like things, and just make sure that we're educating people and offering free HIV tests and free COVID tests if people need COVID tests. And then also we are, my church, we're actually getting ready. The second part of the question is how have we transitioned and stuff during COVID, is that we recognize the power of having a good online presence. And so our church is slowly transitioning into making sure that our live feeds, are representative of excellence, so that when people are drawn to our page or whatever, that they're still captivated and that they still get a powerful message, like what you're doing with StreamYard and with Pyro, making sure that you're presenting something and that we not all sitting, next to a iPhone talking about we having a conversation.
Right.
We brought it up a level and made it be more expansive. And so those are the things that we've done. Those are the things that we continue to do. Our church did take a large hit during COVID, right at the beginning of the pandemic. But from COVID, from when COVID started 3 years ago till now, we have seen like the people are returning to the sanctuary. Maybe not as many as were in the sanctuary before, but people are returning to the sanctuary because there's that clear connection that people need. And so I just think making sure that people aren't sick, and making sure that if you are sick that you stay home, just making sure that we voice those kind of things. And if someone's coughing too much, have the usher go and take them a little mask and
They
tell them to put
purging,
that
they getting
mask
rid of
on.
them spirits. They loosen them spirits now.
Yeah.
Deliverance
Well,
ministry.
that's that spirit. We tell them to take it home, and we'll deal with it from afar. Jesus said, he sent the word to the centurion man, and he was healed. We gonna send the word, and you're gonna be healed.
I love it, Pastor Sammie. Did the pandemic, impact your ministry in a negative way that had you kind of on edge about, are we going to survive this? And then what are you doing currently to ensure your congregation remains safe?
I would say when the pandemic hit, Vision Church Los Angeles had just started in 2020 in January. And so when it really became a mandate that you had to be home, I think it was somewhere in March. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I didn't have time to think about the panic part of the thing. I had to think about, okay, what's the pivot? What do I need to learn, do in order to keep us in the space through this time? So immediately once we counsel, I remember like going into that next week, just learning what apps, what we could use, how do we get ourselves in a way where we still look clean, polished, but how do we get on social media and begin to get into this space to make sure that people can still be engaged and feel like they are part of a spiritual space. And so I instantly went into that mode, and we literally in the pandemic, we grew in the pandemic. And so the pandemic was really a blessing for us in disguise. I loved it because I didn't have to do anything but get dressed from the top up, film my stuff, and I'm done. Loved it. But it was really good for us. And it was a really great time of us engaging market, particularly Black LGBT community, and them being able to ask questions. So we did a couple of things. We preached, but we also had these panel discussions online. We also had what I call fireside chats, where I talked to different people about different things, because again, I'm all about trying to minister to the total man and not just in one direction. And so we use it that way. And so now as we move forward, what we try to do is really some of the same thing that Pastor Curt talked about is, we have at least once a month with someone would talk about what is happening within LA County in terms of health and wellness. And then also we still have masks available, hand sanitizer, all of that, let that mask work for you. That's important for us to put out there. And we do advise in our announcement, if you feel sick or feel nauseated, you have a terrible cough, like it's okay to stay home and it's all right. And then we use technology. Right now, I'm most comfortable with us not being visual yet, but you can go on podcasts and hear us on Apple, on your Apple Podcasts or your Spotify podcast. You can hear not always a service, but you can always hear a motivational 5-star check about. Right now, we're dealing with mental wellness in the first 85 days of the year. So we try to create these multiple ways of you engaging text, conversation, and spirituality, and not always the visual way until, we're ready to expand into that space.
I love it. I love it. So listen, gentlemen, we are out of time, but I'm going to invite you guys back in March, because as you were talking, there was a topic that came to my mindset, and I really want the three of us to really combat it. I may get a fourth person on, but the topic is this, and hopefully, Kwame, you remember this because I might forget. The impact of church trauma upon HIV rates. Because I just really thought about the amount of people that put themselves in harm's way because they were engaging in unsafe behaviors, because they didn't want to live in their authentic truth. And, a lot of people, if they use a condom, it's admitting that I'm about to do something. So let me not use this condom and just pray that God doesn't let me catch something. When I catch something, oh my God. So what role did the church play in increasing HIV rates? So I want us to just talk about that in March. So I'm giving you, 3 weeks to get your scriptures ready, your sermon notes,
those Nicodemuses.
And then we're gonna talk about that in March. So that's what we're gonna do. So we're out of time. Basically, in 15 seconds, let the people know how they can find you on social media and what time your church start. Pastor Curt, go first.
You can find us on, I think it's the renewedla.org. We also have an app. You can download the app if you have an iPhone or an Android. And then you can watch us on YouTube every Sunday. If you want to get into touch with me personally, you can reach me at renewed_man on Instagram.
You can go to visionchurch.org, or you can go to Instagram to Vision Church LA. And you can go to my page as well, which is at Sammie Haynes, SammieHaynes, INC on Instagram, and Sammie Haynes on Facebook. And then you can go to SammieHaynes.com as well in order to connect with me and connect with the church.
That's it. So listen, that wraps this episode of Conversations with Clergy, brought to you by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, or the HVTN, and Church One Ministries, who is in the fight to combat COVID-19 on both a national and a local level. So please check out the websites for both of these phenomenal organizations. And then I'll be back with you next week for another Conversations with Clergy. Our special guest is yet to be determined. We're waiting on him to respond to say yeah, but I'm looking forward to March to having this conversation with these two phenomenal clergy. Listen, if you're looking for a place to go for Sunday worship, check them out in person or on social media. It will change your life and it'll help you out. So that's a wrap for this episode. I will see you next week. Take care, goodbye, and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.